There have been plenty of ugly Formula 1 cars over the years. Some seasons even seem to produce many aesthetically challenged machines. The horrible proboscis noses of 2014 still linger long in the memory. And yet most of the machines that win in Formula 1 are perfectly decent in the looks department. A few can even be described as beautiful. Partly that's because some of the odd bitzer specials that have turned up over the years were always going to get beaten by properly honed, refined and neat designs. There's also some truth in the maxim, if it looks right, it probably is. But sometimes cars do slip through the net, and we're not looking at obvious howlers, unsuccessful cars such as the 1979 Enzyme N179 or the 1995 McLaren MP410 here. This is our list of the F1 World Championship's ugliest winning cars. Number 10, the Ferrari 625. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with the look of the Ferrari 625, but it has to be one of the most boring F1 cars to emerge from the legendary Italian team. It was basically the 500 model, which had dominated the F2 era of the World Championship, fitted with an enlarged 2.5 litre 4-cylinder engine for the new 1954 F1 regulations. With money tight, Ferrari struggled to field suitable machinery for the fresh formula. It ran the 553, the 555 and the 625 across 1954 and 1955, and only really climbed back to the top when it inherited Lancia's D50 and after Mercedes withdrew from the sport. But the 625 had two great days that made it a winner, and therefore eligible for our list. The first came thanks to Jose Froilán González, who thrashed the opposition in the 1954 British Grand Prix at Silverstone. The second came in a race of attrition, the reliable Maurice Trintignant taking victory in the 1955 Monaco Grand Prix after the rapid Mercedes W196s had broken down and Alberto Ascari had thrown his D50 into the harbour. Number 9, Tyrrell 011 B. Tyrrell often produced unusual looking cars. Jackie Stewart's 1973 title-winning 006 was striking rather than beautiful, and the same could be said of the six-wheeled P34. By 1982, the Cosworth DFV runners were coming under increasing threat from the turbocharged hordes. Tyrrell's original 011 wasn't the best of the normally aspirated runners, but Michele Alboreto won the season-closing Caesars Palace Grand Prix in fine style. It's the 1983 version that gets the car onto this list. Extensive rule changes, particularly the imposition of flat bottoms and the banning of skirts, required extensive changes and created the B version. The revised 011 driven by Alboreto and Danny Sullivan was rarely competitive, and its biggest aesthetic offence was probably its enormous nose. The DFY engined 011 B became a winner thanks to Alboreto's drive in Detroit. A combination of the non-stop strategy and problems for others, in particular Nelson Piquet's Brabham picking up a puncher, got Alboreto to the front. Number 8, Williams FW09. Another car with an ugly, awkward nose. Something of a theme on this list, the Williams FW09 was the team's first turbocharged F1 racer. The chassis struggled to deal with the Honda V6's harsh power delivery and was rather unreliable. In the sweltering heat at the 1984 Dallas Grand Prix, however, it held together. As other cars wilted or were thrown into the barriers by their drivers, Keke Rosberg kept his head, helped by a water-cooled skullcap, and charged through to a dominant and famous victory. The FW09 failed to score another point, despite extensive revisions that included reprofiled side pods, but it had given Honda its first F1 win since 1967. And, of course, it made itself eligible for this list. Number 7, the Ferrari F310, the high-nose version. The original low-nose version of Ferrari's 1996 contender was not a beauty, the odd side pods looking particularly clunky when viewed head-on, but at least it marks the car out from the rest and will forever be associated with Michael Schumacher's first victory for Ferrari, thanks to his wet weather masterclass in Spain. The high-nose version, which took over from round 8 in Canada, removed the car's distinction and was a lot uglier. It was not a match for the Williams FW18, but Schumacher somehow managed to drag the car to 2 more victories, in Belgium and Italy. Schumacher, teammate Eddie Irvine and even designer John Barnard weren't fans of the car, which was also unreliable. Schumacher's V10 engine famously failed on the warm-up lap after he had qualified on pole for the French Grand Prix. The 1997 F310B, which got much closer, indeed sometimes a little too close, to Williams, was hardly a stunner. But the stubby F310 that started Ferrari's shoey era gets the dubious nod for this list. Number 6, Cooper T43. This is, almost certainly, the most important car on this list. Thanks to Sterling Moss, the Cooper T43 was the first mid-engine car to win a World Championship F1 race, when he outfoxed Ferrari and Maserati in the 1958 Argentine Grand Prix. Essentially a Formula 2 car with a 2-litre Climax FPF engine, the diminutive T43 somehow managed to look bulbous, and didn't exactly scream performance, especially when placed against the better proportioned front-engined opposition. The T45, which Maurice Trintignant used to win the 1958 Monaco Grand Prix, was very similar, and even the double title-winning T51, with full 2.5-litre Climax power, wasn't the sleekest of machines. Lead driver Jack Brabham once described the 1960 low-line T53 as the first proper GP Cooper, and it's not hard to see why. Number 5. Benetton B192. Several Benettons of the early 1990s could have made this list, but we've gone for the B192 because it was the first high-nose Benetton, helping to set a trend that made F1 cars generally less attractive for several years. The B192 is significant because it was the first car to feature the Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne, Michael Schumacher combination that would score so much success, first with Benetton and then Ferrari. It didn't have the sophisticated driver aids such as active suspension and traction control that the much better looking Williams FW14B used to dominate the 1992 season. It was, however, a good chassis, helping Benetton finish only 8 points behind second place McLaren in the constructors' table. Schumacher starred, taking the first of his 91 F1 wins in changeable conditions at Spa, and beat Ayrton Senna to best of the rest status behind Williams duo Nigel Mansell and Riccardo Patrese in the drivers' standings. After a troubled start to the campaign, Martin Brundle also had strong performances, adding 5 podiums to Schumacher's 8. With hindsight, the bulky-looking B192 was a good pointer to how Benetton was building into a real force. Unfortunately, it also gave a vision of what many future F1 cars would be like. Number 4. Mercedes W196, the open-wheel version. This is a controversial inclusion as the W196 was a superb piece of engineering and remains legendary. There are those at Autosport who strongly disagree with this choice, but compare the boxy racer to its main rivals, the classic Maserati 250F and the distinctive Lancia D50. The W196 initially appeared with an attractive streamlined body, in which form it won the 1954 French and Italian Grand Prix, the 1955 Italian Grand Prix, all high-speed venues. But the car wasn't easy to place through the corners, and the open-wheel variant was favoured by lead driver Juan Manuel Fangio. This version won 6 World Championship races, helping Fangio to his second and third world titles, and scored a remarkable 1-2-3-4 finish at the 1955 British Grand Prix. The straight 8 engine, with its desmodromic valves and mechanical fuel injection, was in its own way a work of art, and was powerful and reliable for the period. But aesthetically, the W196 was not on a par with the Italian opposition it regularly defeated. Number 3. Cooper T81. The last Cooper to win a World Championship Grand Prix was not as ungainly as it looked. The Maserati engine, based on a V12 design tried in the 250F the previous decade, seemed to almost spill out of the rear. But in the 1966 season, when only Brabham got its act together for the move from 1.5 litre to 3 litres, the T81, complete with wide open nose, was competitive. Jochen Rindt was a consistent point scorer in the Derek White designed T81 and was a fine second in the Belgian Grand Prix, before 1964 world champion John Surtees joined Cooper, having fallen out with Ferrari. Surtees was a fighting second in the German Grand Prix and won the season finale in Mexico after starting from Cooper's first pole position in 5 years. In between, he might have won the US Grand Prix had he not spent quite so long ranting after a clash with Peter Arundel after he tried to lap the Lotus. Cooper only just failed to pip Ferrari to second in the 1966 Constructors' Table. Surtees was gone by the start of 1967, but new recruit Pedro Rodriguez won the first round at Kyalami in a race of attrition. After that, other cars, most notably the Cosworth DFE engine Lotus 49, moved things out of the T81's reach, but it was still good enough to secure another third place for Cooper in the team standings. Equal first, Ferrari F2012 and Williams FW34. We don't normally like a draw, but 2 race winners from the nadir of the skinny F1 era are just too hard to separate. New rules for 2012, which set a maximum height for the nose just before the bulkhead, resulted in many horrible stepped front ends. An ugly car is one that doesn't win, said Ferrari's chief designer Nicolas Tombazis when the F2012 appeared, a tacit acceptance from even the man who penned the car that it was aesthetically challenged. Both cars had incredibly long wing mounting pillars, creating a gaping mouth at the front, and the side pods did little to help matters. The Ferrari had the better livery, but the Williams had a smoother engine cover. Both were outshone by others on a grid that was not exactly full of good-looking racing cars. The Ferrari was also the better machine, at least in the hands of Fernando Alonso, who scored better results. The Spanish driver took 3 wins in one of the great F1 campaigns, including a charge from 11th on the grid in Valencia, and only narrowly lost to Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel in the title race. The FW34, driven by Pastor Maldonado and Bruno Senna, only took Williams to 8th in the constructors' standings. But in one of the most remarkable one-hit wonders in sporting history, Maldonado managed to hold his nerve long enough to beat Alonso to victory at the Spanish Grand Prix, creating probably the ugliest F1 podium of all times. That's the cars, not the drivers. So there's our top 10 list of the ugliest race-winning F1 cars. Did we miss out any monstrosities? Let us know in the comments below.